Hello, everybody. This is Alex, the host of the Doomed Planet podcast. This is episode 103. We're going to talk about Thomas Forcade, publisher of High Times magazine and Wild Man. A new book came out by Howe called Agents of Chaos. Thomas King Forcade, High Times, and the paranoid end of the 1970s. Yes, Sean wrote a really good book about Marvel Comics called Marvel Comics, The Untold Story. I'm not a huge fan of superhero comics or Marvel Comics, but this was a very readable book. With us today, he's back. It's Uncle Grandpa. Okay, here we go.
All right.
Wow, Uncle Grandpa, you're familiar with High Times magazine?
Used to read it. You never. I'd go to the newsstand and I'd look at whatever was available, and I always picked up High Times just to see what the articles were and what was happening in the wonderful world of legalizing pot.
This was a long story short. Thomas Forcade was part of the underground newspaper movement, right, in this country.
He was part of it.
And then he got disillusioned with the whole scene when it was falling apart in the 70s and just decided to start High Times, thinking that legalizing drugs was the way to revolution and whatnot.
It took a long time, though. It took, as far as I'm concerned, it took too long.
To legalize the weed,
Yeah, exactly.
Now, this book, it's a very long book. We'd never be able to get through it all. Tom Forcade, he appears out of nowhere in 1969 and starts leading the Underground Press Syndicate. And this was a group, all the underground newspapers, like every town had one, right? Seattle was the Helix. There was the Berkeley Barb.
The Oracle. San Francisco had the Oracle.
Yeah, of course. And there's some talk that Tom was maybe a double agent or a snitch or a narc or something. It keeps coming up, but he appears out of nowhere, and suddenly he's in charge of the Underground Press Syndicate. And they also published a compilation of all the stuff coming out in these papers called Orpheus. Okay. And again, we go through everything, and every character from the 60s and every big event is in this book, and Forcade is a part of it. But we just don't have time to go through it. What I did do, is highlight some parts of the book that maybe we can talk about. Forcade is an odd character. Very few photographs of him exist. He's very paranoid. At one point, he said he doesn't smoke, drink, or use medication or drugs of any kind. And that was a lie, because he was kind of a druggie. And toward the end there, when he, surprise alert, he killed himself, he was on a lot of drugs. So the rise of new left politics in the 60s, I think people really thought they were going to change the world. All these movements, people thought, okay, this is it. This is our time, and we're going to overthrow capitalism and build a better society. Isn't that correct, Uncle Grandpa?
Yeah, an important part of that was taking drugs. It was like, It's like, okay, in order to bring that about, we thought everybody needs to drop acid. If everybody just important. Dropped acid, we'd all live in this utopia, and of course that just didn't happen. And then of course its little brother pot that's been around for a long time. The beats, of course.
Little sister, bro.
The little sister, okay, little sister of LSD.
Mary is a girl.
Marijuana, and marijuana is the gateway drug to taking LSD. A lot of times it was said to be the gateway drug to heroin and coke, but that's really not a reality. It's like it made you want to get more psychedelic. And
then the reverse is true too. I remember I've taken LSD a few times. you smoke pot the next day and it like comes back.
Right.
You get that trigger.
Oh yeah, no, you can coast on an LSD trip. You can
yeah.
just go a week if you say hi.
So there was a burgeoning psychedelic counterculture. An important part were these underground newspapers: the Berkeley Barb, the Fifth Estate in Detroit, the East Village Other, right?
Right.
And so Tom Forcade was in on this. And like I said, Orpheus, a Reader's Digest anthology of articles from the underground press. I want to mention, not a lot has been written about Tom Forcade until this book came out. He's doesn't want to get his face photographed, and he says, like, wow, we have something in common, because I believe that paranoia is a form of awareness, right? Like, as Manson would say, the wolf out in the desert, he can hear like a pin drop 10 miles away. He knows any time a fly lands on a cactus, right? Because he's hyper aware of his surroundings, so he can survive. And Forcade is saying, when they start rounding people up, I don't want to make it easy for them. I don't think you do well in the iPhone age where everyone is being tracked constantly through their phone. He would be sad about that because of his paranoia.
It was a very paranoid time. I was involved in the anti-war movement and wound up having a file with the FBI, which I never paid the $15 to read. I didn't care. But it was like we were always like prepared for the trucks to come rolling down the street and for them to start rounding us up. And in those days, the FBI were the bad guys. I mean, there's a real strange reversal where the FBI is once again the bad guys, but it's the bad guys for the right wing. But in those days, we felt that they were like the state police. That was when Hoover was still the boss.
Oh yeah,
and
Edgar Hoover.
Yeah, and they did some really underhanded things.
Oh, of course, they still do that. They entrap you. They have informers. Any weasel thing, and the paranoia is justified. Drugs were illegal. Pot, you could do 10 years for a joint in Texas. Or
I was busted. Busted.
You were busted, and that was a little blip in your life that you didn't need, right?
Did not need that. In fact, now I feel bad about it. At the time, I just thought, well, all the times I didn't get caught, I finally got caught. And I spent a week in jail, pled out, wound up on. I didn't have to do any more jail time. I was on probation and paid a $250 fine. But I was a felon. I was a felon for probably the next 3 years, and then they offered me this program where I could get it expunged, and so I did. So
it's a form of social control, all those useless laws.
Right.
They want to keep you busy so you can't go out and protest and take LSD.
I was busted for 3 seeds. That's all they could find. There
ridiculous.
was a lot more going on, but all they could pin on me was 3 seeds. And it's amazing that even in 1969, that was enough to get me busted.
Yeah, there's so many stories like yours, Uncle Grandpa. Just breezing through this, Students for a Democratic Society, that's kind of the anti-war movement group, the college boys, right?
Right. Oh,
then you had these other groups, the yippies, that became the zippies, and we'll get into the 70s, like
Weather Underground.
The Weather Underground. That's when it really getting radical with bombs going off.
That's
and
right.
stuff.
That's right.
And law enforcement kind of crushed everything, and the whole movement kind of died by the time Reagan came into office, right?
That's
and then
right.
it was all
during the 70s. There was this war going on. Sure, and then of course there was the Patty Hearst kidnappers, the Simeonese Liberation Army.
And that was that siege. Patty Hearst turns out was not in that house.
She was not in that house,
and we broadcast on live TV.
We watched it on live TV, and at the time, I took it as a message. I thought, they're telling us
the
that
state
if you
is
do
telling
this
you,
shit,
don't do this.
we're going to come and get you. And that was the first time that we saw SWAT teams in action.
Oh,
was,
yeah. The SWAT is a new thing.
That was a new thing.
Yeah,
and
now every small town, police force has a SWAT team and like military hardware from when Obama unleashed the floodgates on like certain military surplus and gave it to the cops.
Yeah, craziness.
Okay, we're getting off track here. So much to cover. Rolling Stone, remember that magazine?
Yeah, 1968.
People were immediately calling Jan Wenner, the publisher, kind of a sellout, right? He's betraying the revolution to turn a profit.
If you were into drugs, sex, and rock and roll, you didn't give a shit about all that.
Yeah.
There was always that talk. There was always the like organizers, the community organizers, and they were communists. A lot of them were communists, and they were always ready to call somebody a sellout against the revolution. Right. Like when the Beatles came out with that song "Revolution,"
right? And they thought, they're co-opting
that was a huge sellout to the active left.
Yeah. Now, one thing we should point out, the active left, especially into the 70s, it's a small group of the long hairs and the people enjoying the lifestyle and the drugs. Most of them are not active left,
That's right?
They're just partiers.
So, the college boys, it was an interesting thing. It was like the hippie population tripled on the weekends when all the college kids would come out to take LSD and get involved in orgies and all that beautiful stuff, but then they were back in school. A lot of them became yuppies and were the builders of Silicon Valley. It came out of that. It came out of LSD.
The Holers catalog and that stuff. Stewart Brand, right?
You got it.
Okay, so the underground newspaper people are meeting in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and they have a beef with the Max Schur of the Berkeley Barb. Turns out he's pocketing $4,000 a week from this paper. Everyone else works for almost nothing, and the feminists in the group don't like all the porn ads. So you're it's a big tossed salad of different left-wing ideologies going on here, and also profit making, like Forcade making a profit as a publisher of High Times eventually, but also he's a big-time drug smuggler. Did you know that?
Did not know that.
Yeah, the guy from High Times. Okay, so then the cops or the pigs bust this hippie newspaper meeting, and Abby Hoffman is like, we got to run. It's the pigs. And then this is a good book, but this has to be an embellishment. A cop goes up to Abby Hoffman, and he held the stock of his 12 gauge against Abby's crotch, caressed it, and flashed an icy, daring smile. Is that bringing back bad memories of cops?
No, actually, when I was busted, they treated me kindly. The cops. It was the Daly City Police Department, and they let me. They didn't cuff me.
What? That's
insane. They did not cuff me. They put me in the back, and it was Well, California,
Okay, so these yippies and whatnot, they're trying to muscle in on the Woodstock Festival and get some concessions for their movement and stuff. So the two guys that were the creators of Woodstock, Cohen and Foreman, they drove really fancy cars, a Lotus Elan and a Vincent Black Lightning.
Yeah, well, they had to come up front with some money, to do that. They had to have, and these guys had the money for it.
Forcade and Abby Hoffman and a dozen other people burst into the Woodstock offices and demand a meeting. And they have attack dogs on chains. They shook down the Woodstock promoters for about $10,000 to be divided among yippies, SDS, Alternative University, the Crazies, the Motherfuckers. Are you familiar with them? That's another sort of wild hippie group. And so the Woodstock guys said, okay, we're going to give you Movement City. It's going to be this area of Woodstock where you can hand out your Marxist literature and whatnot. And it turns out they just gave them 30 square yards of plywood booth space. And so Woodstock, a huge event, but the whole organizing and didn't really work. And again, most of these people are there to party. They don't, they may be to the left because they understand that LSD is a left-wing concept, but it's not about, okay, Woodstock, music, yes, but it's a revolution, right? It's not, that's not what it was about.
No, not that revolution anyway. It was a social revolution.
Yeah, exactly.
Sexual
revolution, right? Not the government is going to stay the same. The American empire is not going to change. There's this girl working at Al Goldstein's Screw magazine who Forcade becomes enamored with, and she starts working for him. Do you recall Screw magazine?
Yeah, you sure do.
Yeah, because that is interesting. It was printed on newsprint, like an underground paper, but with, explicit hardcore pornography in it.
Yeah, the laws changed. The laws basically changed with the Howe trial in the 50s, where Ginsburg wasn't charged. Ferlinghetti and his partner were charged with transporting pornography through the mail.
Because of Ginsburg's Howl?
That's
yes.
right.
Okay.
A lot of gay referencing in that poem. Anyway, it was but that changed things. That really changed things. Because the ruling is that it had artistic value. And artistic and social value, and so they use that yardstick for a lot of different things after that.
There's this podcaster I like that is problematic, Robert Evans, and he made a blanket statement about the 60s that it was a very male-dominated, this movement, which was true, but he also said it was kind of homophobic, anti-gay, and that's just not true. I mean, who do you think Allen Ginsberg was?
Yeah, no, that's not.
Yeah,
that wasn't
absolutely
my
not. There were gay communes.
And also,
there was sexual experimentation.
Yeah, men were obviously out in front. But I'll tell you, it was during that time that I started experiencing feminism. Was during that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
The hippie chicks. Right? It's like they weren't like, down home girls at all. They were different, and they were very aware of what feminism was, and they were ready to let us know about it too.
Okay, so we're breezing through the 60s here. And this book kind of jumps back and forth. The SDS kind of imploded, but they went to meet with the Weathermen, right? This radical group of bombers right after the Manson murders.
Right. Oh, that was
and then this
bad times.
Dig it, Bernadine Dorn, a leader of the Weathermen, exclaimed, enthusing about the Manson killings. First they killed those pigs, then they ate dinner in the same room with them. They even shoved a fork into the victim's stomach. Wild. Okay, and the other people at this meeting are horrified, right? As you would be. I mean, it's hard to praise. People were terrified when that happened.
The Manson family were not your typical hippies.
They were not there, no.
I like how they're portrayed in Once a Time in Hollywood.
I love that movie. I love that movie.
Tarantino's version of it. I love the all of what he did really recreated 1969.
It's a great
that was real
movie.
Time travel
Brad Pitt is
me.
A great actor. Yeah. Of course, it's a fictionalized version of the 60s, like everything. So, okay, after Woodstock, there was this big gung-ho thing about let's do our own festival, right? And there were a few of those. I'm not sure if this is the Randall Island Festival, which was a disaster, but here's a good bit. Johnny Winter, the great Johnny Winter, sent one of his roadies into the audience, and they came back with 50 or 60 doses of acid. Johnny picked about 20 of them, washed them down with a beer, and said, "I'll be ready in a couple minutes." Then he came on stage and played for 8 hours.
Yeah.
That's the
Oh,
60s, baby.
Oh, yeah, really. A lot of the time, Jimi Hendrix was on acid when he was doing that.
And he's a good
patron saint of Seattle.
The FBI supervised informants in Seattle and also built bombs and provided them to anti-war activists.
That's believable.
Yeah, because they
That
can't
is
bust
believable.
anyone the normal way. They have to find someone who's mentally ill that they can set up, right? And here we go, Kent State. Wow, that's when it just blew up, right?
Yeah.
Like Nixon is bombing Cambodia. There's protests. Kent State, the National Guard blows away those kids, 4 kids.
Right. And that wonderful song by Crosby, Stills, and Nash comes out, and Young, because it was Neil Young who wrote it, 4 Dead in Ohio. They came out a month after the shooting.
Okay, right.
The record was released.
Yeah, that was a popular record. That night, several hippies, Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, who of course went to Wall Street, Ed Sanders of the Fugs, right, and Paul Krasner, one of my heroes from the 60s. He's the publisher of The Realist.
The Realist.
Right?
My brother used to subscribe to it.
What a great newsletter.
Yeah, it was.
They did the most famous article is the Kennedy assassination article where they alleged that Lyndon Johnson had sex with Kennedy's head.
Was that in The Realist?
Yeah, that blew me away. Can you imagine reading that, several years after the assassination?
Oh, there were no limits in those days.
So right after Kent State, all these guys are like, okay, this is it. This is the revolution. Abby Hoffman is all worked up. Allen Ginsberg tries to calm him down, and Abby calls him a CIA pig. So you can see things are fracturing, right?
In those days, like during the Johnson administration, we thought of liberals as the enemy.
Oh yeah,
the Republicans we just wrote them off, but the liberals were the ones that got us in.
That hasn't changed. That's how I feel about the Democratic Party, right? I mean, that hasn't changed that much. Okay, now on May 8th, this is another great 60s moment. Construction workers unleashed violence on a hippie protest, and the police stood by and did nothing as the construction workers kicked the shit out of a bunch of hippies in New York. Remember that?
Right. The silent majority.
Right. And so that's a good... Tom Forcade threw a pie at someone. He's a provocateur, right?
Right.
And
active terrorism.
Yeah, you couldn't get away with pie throwing these days.
No.
Okay, here's one of his psychedelic experiences. Someone in Andy Warhol's entourage, all the cool people are hanging out together, right, at this time.
Sure.
Gave Forcade some LSD. I climbed out of the car, melted into the door, and slid down the side in a psychedelic blob.
Been there.
Yeah, that's why you only take LSD. Yeah. It's something you only need to take once, and then you take it a few times, and you're like, I'm done.
That's true. Yeah, it was always good to be close to a sleeping bag or a bed to lay down on, so you could just trip out and go where it took you.
So they're what is this? Okay, they're trying to do the Randall's Island Music Festival. Real promoters, Don Friedman and Bob Gardner, had worked with Billie Holiday and Chet Baker. Now they're trying to work with these hippies. 24 white radicals went to their office with a list of demands. They want bail money for the Black Panthers, bail money for anyone arrested at the Randall's Island, what is going to be the New York Pop Festival, 10,000 free tickets for members of the community, 5,000 plus expenses of 10 community bands, and again, an education center at the festival grounds. So hippies shaking down rock promoters. It's not going to end well, right?
Yeah, I want to say something about Bill Graham.
At
the time, we thought he was like a carpetbagger. He was from back east, and
of
and
the Fillmore.
he started controlling everything in San Francisco. But
Right, you were there,
and
right.
I was there. In hindsight, it's like he was an incredible promoter, and he brought the music to the people.
Allman Brothers, baby.
And in those days, to go like to the Fillmore auditorium, it was only like $2.50.
Yeah,
which we thought was a ripoff anyway. But it was easy to
imagine seeing all those
to come by.
incredible-
$2.50. But and like Woodstock, I think that was $5 before people broke the fences down and just flooded in. And they they had the foresight to just call it a free festival after that started happening. But Bill Graham was one of the sort of men of history, really, for that whole movement.
Look at him as a Jan Wenner character. He's a capitalist, capitalizing on the hippie scene, but again, promoting these great artists and helping expose them to a wider audience. So why not? And of course, Bill Graham died tragically in a helicopter accident. Kind of crazy. Why do these music industry people get on small planes or helicopters? Okay, so Randall's Island, Joe Cocker, Richie Havens, Eric Clapton, and Miles Davis canceled 10 years after finished a set. The audience set the field ablaze and fed the fire with trash and police barricades, and then the NYPD stormed in. And people were throwing bottles, and so it didn't end well.
The Rolling Stones free concert is going to be on tomorrow at the Altamont Speedway, apparently.
Oh, you were at Altamont.
I was at Altamont.
Okay, God, that was a bummer.
It was, it started out well. They had this like hot air balloon, and it went up, and it was all multicolored, and it. See, but before the music even came on, it's like if you got a whole bunch of hippies together, they created their own festival. So there was like music and Hare Krishna and all kinds of stuff going on. And it wasn't until later in the day, in the afternoon, where I went down to where there was all these ambulances down there, and they were bringing people in and bandaging their heads, and I didn't even know what I didn't know what was going on until I saw that movie, Gimme Shelter. But
great movie.
At the time, I just thought, God, how are these people getting their heads bashed in?
I think, and then who was the member of the Jefferson Airplane got his head bashed in? Marty Ballin, right?
Marty Ballin.
And and there's a great scene in that movie where Jerry Garcia is getting off the helicopter, and they're like, "Hey, man, they're kicking the shit out of people, and they just bashed Marty on the head," and Jerry is just like turns around and gets back on the helicopter. Right? The dead are not going to play.
They got out of there. Well, they were the ones that befriended the Hells Angels in the first place. It was the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, that's.
And then somebody's great. I think this was the people from the Jefferson Airplane. Their bright idea was, hey, we'll have the Hells Angels run security, and we'll pay them in cases of beer.
Right, and then they stabbed a guy and killed him.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, it went wrong. And so the Randall's Island Festival, very obscure that we've been talking about, after this breakdown, the promoter says the love and peace era of Woodstock is done. So same thing with Altamont. Like all these horrible things happened at around the same time, right?
Right. It was a bad year. We called it the season of the witch.
Must be the season of the witch. Must be the season of the witch, yeah. Must be the season of the
July 1970, a bunch of the Weathermen are indicted by a federal grand jury. conspiring to commit mass assassinations. Like, things are getting ugly. Abby Hoffman is working on his project, Steal This Book. Tom Forcade is editing this book for him, believe it or not. And then they get into a dispute because Abby didn't want to pay him, right? And they're like, "You capitalist pig, you what?" So
it's not over. It's not over. Our revolution, our social revolution.
It's dormant. It's been dormant for a long time.
But it's there. I mean, it's like all of those ideas are pretty much mainstream ideas now, except for group sex.
Forcade joins Hunter Thompson and illustrator Ralph Steadman in Newport for a boat race. Okay, so he's everywhere. And Army Math Research Center at the University of Wisconsin. You know this, right? They bombed it, and unfortunately, they didn't want to kill anyone. There was some guy in there working in the middle of the night who died.
Right.
And so bombs were exploding at least weekly in Chicago, Marin County, Seattle, and Santa Barbara.
Right.
I guess there's a bombing in Seattle. I'll have to look into what that was.
The one in Santa Barbara, that was the Bank of America.
Oh, yeah.
Was bombed.
So they're coming close here. Like, I don't condone violence, but bombing Bank of America, that sounds appealing in a way.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Chopping, gouging, slicing and stabbing, looting all the stores and everybody's grabbing. Politicians and the media telling their lies. Hey everybody, you need guillotine supplies. Torches, pitchforks, guillotine supplies. You'll find it at Chop Mart. Chop Mart, 1789 Skagsport Way South, Cedro Woolley, Washington, 98284.
Well, it didn't to me at the time. I mean, I was schooled on pacifism and nonviolence when I joined the anti-war movement. In fact, to this very day, I'm a pacifist and do not believe in taking up arms. And so a true pacifist.
Okay, so Tom Forcade is getting money from a book deal to do a hippie bus situation. At the end of 1970, J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI is asking the Senate for 1,000 new agents, right? And this whole thing, Nixon and Hoover cracking down on drugs, they had two reasons for that.
War on drugs.
To suppress the hippies and the blacks.
That's exactly right.
And boy, were they successful with that. And the war on drugs, of course, by Reagan in 1980, we just ramped that up, and then Clinton jacked it up even more. And guess who has more people in prison by any metric than any other country in the world right now to this day?
The U.S. of A.
The U.S. of A.
The 60s just bled into the 70s. It was gone by 75. That the great party was over by 75, and that's when the punks started coming into it, and we old hippies just didn't know what to make of the punks.
Yeah, but guess what Tom Forcade did? He glommed on to the Sex Pistols and tried to make a movie about their tour, and they hated him. They're like, fuck this hippie. So, again, Tom Forcade, had he lived, he'd be with every cultural movement, right?
Yeah.
Attica riots happen.
Yeah.
God.
Attica.
So for people that don't know, prisoners took over the Attica State Prison, held it for a few days, and Governor Nelson Rockefeller, again, one of the leaders of the war on drugs, ordered an invasion in which multiple prisoners and guards were murdered.
And hostages.
And well, the guard hostages, yeah. And then they dug a ditch and made everyone poop in it and then crawl through it.
Whoa, that I did not know.
Okay, so yeah, we jumped right from the peace and love and the LSD into just violence, right?
Yeah.
And
well, the drug scene changed too, and
it got ugly.
In the 70s,
it,
all of a sudden, it was all about cocaine. You know.
Yep, that's in this book too. Like, there was a glamour, romantic time when you could take an airplane to Colombia and get the Santa Marta Gold. Just Tom Forcade is doing this. And if they gave you any Coke, it was just like, here's a little gift in a little box of Coke. And that quickly changed to airplanes picking up Coke and forget the dope, right?
Right.
And luckily for us dopers, you had people in Northern California starting to learn how to grow the shit.
Right.
So there was a time when it was all imported, right? Like Colombian gold and all the stuff like.
Right. Yeah, it really became part of the music scene. You know, you hear about a whole lot of different musicians that were really into coke. In fact, surprisingly, Tony Bennett actually OD'd on coke. He had to go to the hospital, probably caused a heart attack or something.
Entertainers have always loved cocaine, going back to the 1920s.
Coke or heroin. A lot of heroin was happening during those times too.
Yeah, again, the theme here, the innocence gets corrupted by the ugliness. Like weed becomes coke, becomes heroin.
Right.
Luckily, in my own life, I stuck with the weed.
Yeah, well, and then of course, what came out later was ecstasy. That was in the 90s. I was in Marin County during the 90s, and they had sort of a hippie revival because all the kids were like doing ecstasy and going to raves, you know, and just getting enlightened on the music, you know, just like us.
I'm not a big ecstasy fan. I think the one time I took it, it was probably poison that wasn't actually ecstasy because it was not a good.
I did it once or twice, and it was just a happy thing, you know. Just there was no visuals; it was just happiness.
Slip inside the eye of your mind.
Hold on here.
There was. I want to say something about the LSD in those days.
Yeah.
It started out with the Sandoz Laboratories LSD, which was very
pure pharmaceutical,
very pure, sort of
LSD.
bummer-proof.
Yeah.
And then Owsley came out, and he did really good pure acid too.
Yeah.
But then there was like dealers that were like cutting it with other shit, and that's where the bummers came from. Don't take
trips.
the brown acid.
Yeah, and then you have Owsley wannabes trying to cook up acid, and maybe it's not as
adding
good.
the wrong things to it. Yeah, and that's where it got its bad name, was the bummers. You know, where people had to be hospitalized. That was during what I called the season of the witch, is where you started seeing bad acid. That was like in 1968 and 69.
They just made it illegal too.
Yeah. Yeah, 1966 was when they made it illegal.
Okay. So in 1972, Republican and Democratic national conventions both held in Miami. And there's more talk of Forcade being a cop here. Miami police said they'd been told at a high level not to bust Forcade during the convention.
Oh, that's interesting.
And you have people like Mike Royko and Jack Anderson, big journalists at the time, trying to look into Forcade and figure out, who the fuck is this guy? Now, in this book, we'll skip through this. There's an entire chapter, 1897 to 1969, going into Tom Forcade's whole life story back 3 generations, right? And Just his dad died in a car accident when he was a kid, and he got interested in cars. He served a bit in the military in the mid-'60s, just like you, Uncle Grandpa. And
Right. No, I wasn't drafted. I enlisted.
Okay. And he failed a psychological exam and was kicked out.
That didn't happen to me. I would have liked that, but it didn't happen to me.
So Tom Forcade's real name, by the way, is Gary Goodson. So Tom Forcade, that's a facade, as they say. Okay, so Forcade is writing a book, an outrageous comic novel called Visions of Hitler. Nazi leaders in South America. That's real. There were lots of Nazis going to South America. There is a special cruise for the elites that Forcade and his friend stow away on this boat with Norman Mailer and Isaac Asimov and all these people, including Werner von Braun, an actual Nazi rocket scientist. So they're stowed away on this boat, and they get Norman Mailer and Hugh Downs stoned. So
Yeah, that was the whole thing. It was like, that was the proselytation of the time, was if you would just take acid, you'd see, you'd understand. They say the Kennedy brothers took it.
And Henry and Claire Booth Luce of Life Magazine Empire, Time Life Magazine Empire. Back in the 50s, actually, the cool people got a hold of it first.
That's right. Through the CIA.
Yep, absolutely.
That's it. All the Sandoz lab acid went to the CIA, and they were the distributors. That was during the late 50s and early 60s.
Here's Tom, what he has in his pocket on a given day. Quaaludes, Valium, Vicodin, Codeine, Dexedrine, Dexamyl, Orange Barrel LSD. And he's popping drugs like jelly beans. So that's going to be his downfall. He's like a poly drug user. He's just not doing one drug. Like, say, oh, you're a heroin addict. That's the only drug you do. No, he's mixing it up.
Yeah, that was really typical. We all experimented. We all checked things out. But the opioids, I checked that out through opium.
That's the way to do it then. Yeah.
Smoked it through an opium pipe and just got dreamy.
Yeah, well, just don't use a needle, and you can experiment all you want.
Yeah. Well, you could get addicted to opium if you smoked it.
Sure. Oh, sure.
Yeah. No, it wasn't that big of a deal to me. It was like LSD that was where it all happened, was in LSD. And pot was just sort of a way to just keep you simmering,
Yeah. So the Underground Press Syndicate, right, all these underground papers, they end up rebranding as the Alternative Press Syndicate.
Right.
And that exists to this day. I mean, The Stranger in Seattle, the Alternative Weekly, that's part of that group. And
you used to work there, didn't you?
I did used to work there. That was fun. Big room full of exciting people, artists and musicians, and doing a lot of drugs too, which is always fun when you're somewhat young.
Somewhat.
Forcade is getting $3.50 a pound for the good Colombian Santa Marta gold, double the price of the Mexican crap. Chiba and Maui Wowie. Yeah, again, this is when they were importing the good stuff, if you could get it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Panama Red.
Panama Red, Panama Red.
Panama Red and Maui Zowie. And then Thai Stick.
Right,
Thai
Wowie,
Stick.
not Zowie. Yeah, Thai Stick.
Bang. I'm too high.
And that is literally like a long bud of marijuana tied to a stick, something like
Right,
that.
right. Well,
Yeah,
a
just
bunch
as
of
a
buds.
marketing gimmick.
A bunch of, but just the way they did it in Thailand, you know? Yeah, no, that was some heavy duty stuff. Got lost on it once on a mountaintop. How do you get lost on a mountaintop?
Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado.
Okay, so Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman, the two most famous yippies, right? Rubin renounces drugs and goes to yoga and something called bioenergetics. One other creepy aspect of the 60s and this movement is that a lot of these people went over to New Age bullshit and Jesus and cults.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the cults were out. And the Moonies.
Abby Hoffman gets busted for selling cocaine to an undercover cop. So he's being reckless and stupid, right? A lot of people look up to this guy, and he, I don't know the specific situation there, if he was set up or whatever, but why are you taking the risk of selling penny ante bits of cocaine to a cop?
Well, before I got busted, I thought I would never be busted. But
Right.
but I had to be busted to change that attitude. And I became much more cautious after that.
Paranoia is a form of awareness. Okay, so Forcade is sitting around with Ed Rosenthal. That's a guy that I met at Hempfest. He and Keith Stroup are marijuana legalization activists, and I kind of hate them in a way because, boy, it took a long time.
It sure
It
did.
took a long fucking time. And meanwhile, they're getting paid to supposedly, legalize pot. It didn't happen because of them.
It's interesting how it came about. It was like, I think it must have been big money. It must have been big money. Just thought we can make a lot of money doing this. So, make it legal so we can do this. But there's this whole double-edged sword there. State-wise, it's legal, but nationally, federally, it's not. And it's kind of schizophrenic.
It's crazy. You look at this poster on my wall in the Doom Planet studios here, voting to legalize it, voting to keep it illegal. That's from the I-502 movement when we legalized pot in Washington State. A lot of the pot people were against that, right? Because they're like, we don't want to pay taxes. This is just going to mean big business is going to come in and take over everything.
That's right.
Which, of course, is exactly what happened.
And the state has a big stake in it.
And you know why weed is so expensive?
Taxes.
Yeah, because the state has no incentive to make people sell it for cheaper because of taxes. The
Right.
more you pay, the more the state gets.
That's right.
All right, so they're starting High Times Magazine. Finally, Uncle Grandpa, after 50 minutes of a podcast about High Times Magazine, we're to that section.
We were having a party up at our loft, up at the Commune on Vestry Street. And Sunshine had just come into town. So we were all tripping on Sunshine. We were sitting on the floor with our backs against the couch. And we were pretty high, and all of a sudden Tom sits up. I thought Tom was having a bad trip. I said to him, what's the matter, Tom? You okay? He said, wow, I just had an idea. I said, what's that? He said, what do people want more than drugs? I said, I don't know, money? But I don't even think money, because people are paying money for drugs. And he said, no, more than money, more than drugs. What do people want? I said, I don't know, I don't have a clue. All right? He said, they want information about drugs.
Forcade has moved to New York City. New York City in the 70s, it's a wide open town.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, it was totally
I was
wild.
lucky enough, my dad brought me there when I was little, but to see some of the stuff going on. And I remember getting off of the subway, I'm not sure where, and looking around. There were thousands of gay men everywhere. I was like,
Yes,
little
that's the
kid from
70s.
Ohio. I was like, wow, man. This you might remember this from High Times, the trans high market quotation, and that's something I remember being a tiny kid reading High Times because I love the subversive literature, like when I could get it Hustler magazine or High Times, stuff like that.
Yeah, very
The
subversive.
Freak Brothers. Well, Hustler printed all kinds of anti-establishment
Oh
stuff.
yeah, the articles. Yeah,
There were
I
articles.
read Hustler for the articles.
But the trans high market quotation, that's basically dope prices. So it would be like Detroit, Maui Wowie, 300 a pound, right? I thought that was wild.
Yeah.
Okay, there's in the early issues of High Times, paraphernalia advertising.
Yeah.
Also ads for occult publisher Llewellyn Publications. A book, a promotion for a book about the joys of nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide keeps coming up in this book. They're all doing it.
It was sort of like free and easy, It was like, and it didn't last very long. You'd get a hit of nitrous oxide and you'd get all happy and crazy, and then it'd be gone like in 5 minutes.
Okay, so Tom Forcade holds up a High Times magazine, the second issue, and he says, "This is a license to print money." And sure enough, it's an immediate success. Immediate. So now we go to chapter called Smoke, 1974 to 1978. The high point of High Times. And again, this whole drug culture in the popular culture thing, it's going to be killed in 1980, right? Like Cheech and Chong are not going to make another movie for a long time after that, right? They just crack down not just on the drugs throwing people in jail, but crack down on the culture.
But the thing about a counterculture is it goes on. It just changes form. It's like the pot was still there. The pot kept happening. In fact,
that's true.
It kept expanding. I remember during the 80s, it was like there were the stoners. These younger people. They were into like heavy rock and really loud rock and roll.
The pot industry never went away, but the whole idealism surrounding it did.
Right. Yeah.
The
The
80s
normalization of it.
The 80s was my brief period as a small-time pot smuggler. So it was $1,000 a pound at the time, and I'd go meet this guy Bruno in New York City that my friend knew, and I'd get in a taxi and give him thousands of dollars, and he'd give me big old pound bags of pot. And I'm looking back thinking how stupid that was. Like, I was super cautious and paranoid, and I had a list from NORML, National Organization of Reform of Marijuana Laws, about laws in different states, but it was still stupid. I still could have gotten in big trouble, but luckily I didn't.
Selling it, you bet you could.
Yeah, with a possession even of a pound or 3. High Times sells out their first issue. Forcade does not stop dealing drugs at this point.
We're in the late 70s.
74 to 78, right? I think he kills himself in 78. So the magazine's offices are getting scary. There's a gun. Forcade is a gun guy. He's carrying a gun around in the office. And he's doing High Times is a money laundering scheme for his drug dealing. So if he hadn't have killed himself, I think he would have been starting to get in big trouble.
That's right.
So good for him for taking the easy way out. Okay.
So
Countil Pro. Okay, that's the FBI's snitch project to infiltrate all of these movements with snitches and whatnot, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and the late 70s, I think there was a lot of that happening, and the paranoia just went up during that time too. You didn't know who you could trust, and the other thing that could happen is they could get somebody and threaten him with prison unless he started naming names, and that happened to a friend of mine where to avoid prison he gave up a good friend of his, and of course we held that against him from that moment on, but we weren't in that position.
High Times has a party in room 666 of the Sheraton Palace. Forcade is he usually wears a white 3-piece suit and a hat. There's tanks of nitrous at the party. Jerry Rubin is there, and Gary Trudeau of Doonesbury Comics fame, right? Again, all the cool people want to hang out together and bask in each other's greatness.
Studio 54.
Forcade thinks there's a snitch in the office and hires a private detective. Sure enough, there's a delivery guy working for the High Times is stopping off and giving information to the pigs. They interview Albert Hoffman, creator of LSD. And there's some good journalism in High Times magazine. High Times circulation by 1975, 250,000 copies per issue. The page count has doubled. A third of the pages were ads for mostly paraphernalia, right?
Right. But you still had head shops all during that period, you know.
Oh, there were 2 in my small town in Ohio, 2 head shops.
Right.
Again, that was wiped out by the Reagan era, more or less, although those places are back. But yeah, that's where I first saw like my rip-off press comics like Freak Brothers and stuff. Because the head shop would have a comics rack, but instead of Spider-Man and stuff, it would be Freak Brothers and
Zap
Dr. Atomic and Zap Comics.
R. Crumb.
Christmas issue 1975 had ads for anti-bugging devices, right? Reflecting the paranoia of the publisher. So then Forcade publishes a spin-off called National Weed. It's a National Enquirer for potheads. You can find issues of that, images of that online, and it's like a National Enquirer for potheads. Not a great business idea. Forcade is in Florida. A 40-foot trawler brought in 2 tons of Santa Marta gold from a Colombian freighter anchored 30 miles off the coast. So they're doing the big-time import of weed here. That never ends well for people because they don't know when to stop, right? And you do that once and you make a fortune, then you stop. Don't do it again. But no, it's the thrill of it and the money is too much to resist, right?
Right.
Yeah, Jimmy Buffett died, by the way, speaking of weed and Florida.
Yeah. That was a bit of a shock.
And then he had a rare form of skin cancer. That hurts his brand,
melanoma.
Right? His whole brand is like sit in the sun and have a margarita.
Right.
Okay, now I'm reminded of what happened to you.
Right.
Okay.
Searching for my lost sugar salt. Searching for my lost sugar salt.
Forcade buried a briefcase of money at one point. He's a crazy man. Like, he's not rational. How did he get to the point of publishing this very successful magazine?
That'd be a good Johnny Depp movie.
It's funny you say that because we did an episode about Dick Balch, local car dealer in Seattle, who was also a druggie, and it all ended badly. And I'm thinking this would make a great movie. And I'm thinking, Boogie Nights. The movie has already been made. It's the same exact story.
But you're motoring. Yeah, motoring.
Okay, so now we're getting to the Carter era. The Allman Brothers Band did a Carter fundraiser. The Yipster Times, a yippie newspaper, broke the story, Jimmy Carter Coke scandal.
Yes.
And the yippies find a new media platform for themselves, public access television. Right? During the advent of cable television, these big corporations had to make a concession. They had to agree to open a channel and even provide a studio for the public in every town. So Forcade has, for a long time, subsidized the yippie movement by giving them really good weed deals. He has the best weed in the world. No one else can get it. And again, I'm just guessing. There have been times of scarcity in my lifetime. You didn't always get the primo weed. The Santa Marta Gold was not always available. Here's Tom giving the yippies temple balls from Nepal, vacuum sealed tie sticks, cannabis from Burma. I mean, that is the good stuff, baby.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Well, you know, a lot of it was being locally grown. That was the late 70s and 80s. That's the time of the Mendocino.
yeah, the hippies moved to Northern California and
Yeah, the
set
big-
up shop there.
Big pot farms. And, of course,
Yeah.
the state came up with a program called the CAMP program, where they would go out in helicopters looking for the fields. And they would, and the thing is they wouldn't go in and arrest people, because that just got messy. They would go in and destroy the fields. They would just go in with a team and just hack it all down and burn it.
There's also a side note here about paraquat, right? At one point,
Oh yeah.
they were supposedly spraying the Mexican crop with paraquat.
So do a closer.
Okay. Uncle Grandma's getting restless. And we're going to do a closure here. Yeah, really quickly. We got 10 more minutes.
We're having too much fun.
I knew we'd have to end this. Forcade is now a New York hipster, hanging out with Patti Smith, Blondie, Richard Hell, all these punk types, right?
Yeah.
And he's really big on getting Lech Kowalski, who's trying to do a documentary about the Sex Pistols, he wants Lech to travel with him and do this movie about the Sex Pistols that want nothing to do with him. Yeah, this is really toward the end of his life here. Here's a good one, real quick. Tom wants to close High Times because he's crazy, and his friends bring in, guess who? Jimmy Buffett.
Wow.
To, amazingly consented to go, okay, I'll go talk to Forcade. And he looked up at Jimmy Buffett and said, "What are you doing here?" So, and it's all falling apart here. The podcast episode is falling apart, and Tom Forcade is falling apart. And so he's a New York hipster. His friend is killed in an airplane accident while smuggling yet another load of weed. Tom spirals out of control on drugs. The 1977 Normal Conference, Hunter Thompson was there. They were passing around joints. And the only mistake I found Tom wants to get involved with this really dumb movie called Polk County Pot Plane. It's about a smuggler that lands on top of a hill in Georgia with a load of weed. It's like a low-budget movie, and he goes to Hollywood. He's trying to pitch this. The people in Hollywood, all they want are like, "Do you have any coke?" He thinks it's going to be a Smokey and the Bear for dope heads. That's the only mistake I found in this entire book. What he means here is Smokey and the Bandit, right?
Yeah.
So, BJ and the Bear, that might have confused him. That was a TV show about a truck driver.
Eastbound and down, loaded up and
what they say can't be done.
And Tom Forcade killed himself. We have to end this episode. And he left behind quite a story. And we're really happy to have reviewed this great book that you should go out and get. And
again, the title?
Agents of Chaos, Thomas King Forcade, High Times, and the Paranoid End of the 1970s by Sean Howe. Thank you, Uncle Grandpa. This has been incredible.
My pleasure.
We relived the 60s.
It's all here.
The only thing missing is we should have taken some acid. Then we could have done an 8-hour podcast. All right, bro.
Okay.
Cheers. Wow, that was a thrill ride having Uncle Grandpa there with us. And that was an abrupt ending, so I want to mention that, as Howe says, the magazine High Times never again reached the heights of its late 70s peak. A private equity firm called Arriva Capital acquired High Times parent company, the Trans High Corporation, in 2017. Its CEO donated to right-wing politicians and positioned High Times as a lifestyle brand and a platform for cannabis entrepreneurs. At a certain point in 2020, publication of the magazine was suspended for 5 months. It became horrible after the golden age of Tom Forcade. And I remember picking it up many years ago now, and there were all these ads for fake pot, literally, basically some kind of organic plant matter that sort of resembled pot that you could buy so that you could, conceivably rip off people at your high school by selling them fake pot. So quite a downfall. hightimes.com wants you to subscribe, and they have a picture of the September 2020 issue. Tommy Chong on the cover. Yeah, we all love him, but it's these pot publications run out of stuff to say eventually, and that's a whole different subject there. I actually tried to start my own pot publication and failed. But that is why now I am a successful podcaster, host of the incredibly popular Doomed Planet podcast, Obituaries for the Damned. Goodbye.
Find out more at doomedplanet.com.